Oh no. Oh no. Oh. So The Hunger Games is a series that I grew up with, and I've talked about it before in my videos on books that I read as a child. Yes, I'm very fond of those first two books. Not nearly as fond of the third one, but those two books were peak. They were peak. I've not read them in over 10 years, but Suzanne Collins knew what she was doing for that target demographic. I am a lot more fresh on the movies though. It wasn't too long ago since I've rewatched them, and I am still pretty fond of the first two. They're not without their faults, but I enjoy them. And I was definitely aware of when in 2020 Suzanne Collins published the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, a prequel to the original series. And I had absolutely no desire to read it and never thought I ever would. But of course that is now being turned into a movie, which is coming out in November, and my friend was very excited for it. So he picked it for our book club. And unfortunately, book club picks are binding. There was no getting out of it. I had to read The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. And normally for a book of this sort, like some type of YA teen nonsense, I'd probably just throw up a mini review. But this one, just ripping the band-aid off, this was awful. This was the worst book I've read all year. I doubt I'll read anything worse, and I have many thoughts about it. I assume you all know the basic premise of The Hunger Games, because it's The Hunger Games, and I'm also going to assume that you don't care about spoilers. So this book takes place 64 years before the original Hunger Games. Of course, that one being the 74th, we are now on the 10th annual Hunger Games. And we are following Coriolanus Snow, our protagonist for this book, and of course, the main villain of the original series. Coriolanus is not a main character name. Katniss Everdeen, that's a main character name. Coriolanus, that's like the first name you give to your geriatric villain who is never referred to by their first name, so you don't have to worry about it. Unless you make that character your main character now, and we are just calling him Coriolanus. Anyway, Coriolanus is graduating capital school, whatever, and the game makers of the Hunger Games are trying to think of ways to make it more exciting and engaging for the audiences. Because where the Hunger Games is still new, a lot of people still haven't really been won over by it. They're kind of like, yo, this whole kids killing kids thing, it's a bit not super into it. And one thing I'll give the book credit for is that this is kind of an interesting time to set the story in. I do sort of like how, the initial start of the Hunger Games was very divisive and not very successful. So what we see in this book is them implement a bunch of systems that we see, in the later Hunger Games that have sort of become staples, and here we're seeing like the origins of all that stuff. Namely the mentor system, which they are first testing with this new crop of seniors, Coriolanus among them. Each of them are to be assigned a tribute from the district, and it's their job to advise them to survive in the Hunger Games. Making people like their tribute so they'll be sponsored in the games and sent items that they might need to help them survive. And Coriolanus' tribute is Lucy Gray, a girl from District 12, get it? Because that is where Katniss is from. It's like it's a parallel. It's smart. Lucy is not like the other girls. She's a performer. Like when she gets reaped, she goes up on stage in like some fancy outfit and does a song, and she's like, yeah, stick it to the man. You can't tell me what to do. I do what I want. I'll wear weird clothes and makeup. Aren't I interesting and cool? That's all her character is, ever. Capital wants these games to be a lot more engaging. So of course their strategy is to get, when they get all the tributes to the Capitol, they stick them in a cage in the zoo and don't feed them. And it's Coriolanus who's like, guys, maybe we should give our tributes food, because then they might actually be able to fight each other in the arena. I know the Capitol's bad and all, and most totalitarian regimes are incompetent to a degree, but I don't know, man. This is just something else. So Coriolanus is bringing Lucy Gray food in the zoo, and wouldn't you know it, they fall in love with each other. How swell. I know I haven't really talked about Coriolanus as a character yet, and it's because I'm saving it for later, so just chill. A lot of things are going wrong. Like, a lot of the tributes are sort of acting up. Some of them are killing their mentors, and so the Capitol has to kill the tributes. There's like a few terrorist attacks, killing more tributes and mentors. So by the time the games actually start, we're down to like 13 or something. Now, the Hunger Games themselves as a concept is great, and it's easily the highlight of the first two books. Putting this diverse group of characters into this arena setting, forcing them to fight to the death, seeing what these characters do when they are pushed to the edge, seeing what the game makers have planned, what the arena has in store. It's always exciting stuff, and it's why that this concept has really outlived the series. While this obviously was not the birth of the Battle Royale concept, you can't deny that it had a major impact on popularizing it. Do you know how much Minecraft Hunger Games I played back in the day? It was too much. It really was. You know how much Tetris 99 I still play today. What I'm getting at here is the Hunger Games is awesome. It's cool. I was kind of excited to see it. Because even though I had not been enjoying the book at all up to this point, I'm like, hey man, sure, I can do some Hunger Games. Why not? The Hunger Games in this book is pitiful. It is very, very sad and upsetting. Because we are experiencing the entire thing from Coriolanus sitting down and watching it on the screen. It removes all the suspense and urgency, and it made me want to die. Another big issue is that the book never really took the time to develop any of the other tributes, like at all. So when we're in the arena and Lucy is literally the only character that we know, it's very obvious that she's going to win. And of course she does. And I think Suzanne Collins knew that this wasn't going to be as interesting, because there is a very weird plot development in the middle of the games which involves Sejanus, who is Coriolanus' friend who is very against the Hunger Games, and he's, clearly going down a rebel path. Like, from the moment this guy speaks up, you're like, oh yeah, he's turning on them. Yeah. He sneaks into the arena in the middle of the night to get his tribute's body because he feels bad or something. So they send Coriolanus in after him. So then there's this whole section where the two of them are in the arena being attacked by tributes. And they actually have to fight back. Coriolanus ends up killing his first person. This whole sequence just really reeked of oh Jesus, our Hunger Games are really boring this time around. Maybe it has to do with the fact that our main character is not in them. So let's do that then. I think a solution, which may not have fixed everything, but it would definitely have been better, is if we got Lucy's POV in this book. Like, we were going back and forth between the two characters. That way you could flesh out Lucy a lot and also make the Hunger Games a lot more exciting. Especially if, we could see both alternating viewpoints from inside and outside the arena. That already sounds like way better to me. Anyway, there's been a bunch of scheming going on. Coriolanus ends up cheating to help Lucy win the games. And this part of the book ends with Coriolanus being found out and exposed, but in order to sweep it under the rug and not cause a public backlash, they give him the opportunity to drop out of school and become a peacekeeper. You're saying, hold on, this book does not end with the Hunger Games? No, because that worked extremely well last time. Because now we get to follow Coriolanus as a cop who is assigned to patrol in District 12. I don't know why they sent him here, to be reunited with Lucy. The games are such a disaster for the capital that they're trying to just sweep it under the rug completely. Just send him to somewhere else. There's 11 other districts. What do you... So he does reunite with Lucy and they continue their romance. I barely mentioned their romance because it's so awful. Not only does the romance really come out of nowhere, but they're just so incompatible. They can't really have a conversation with each other without Coriolanus constantly disagreeing with her. Oh, Lucy is so annoying, man. She never shuts her mouth. She's always got this stupid songs. You remember the Hanging Tree? The Hanging Tree song from Mockingjay? She came up with that. What a wacky coincidence. What a cool little Easter egg. I think it would be cool if she sings it 10 times. Let's go. And because they had to go, check off every YA romance cliche, we meet Lucy's ex-boyfriend, who enters the picture, and Coriolanus is very jealous of him. Oh my god. Sejanus, remember the rebel guy? He's also here. He's a peacekeeper too, and also he's being a rebel. Coriolanus learns this and rats him out. Sejanus gets hung. He goes to run away with Lucy into the woods. Lucy finds out that he's the reason Sejanus got killed. She poisons Coriolanus, runs away. He shoots at her. We don't know if she lived or died or not. Coriolanus gets rescued. He gets a promotion. He becomes President Snow. I know that last part was all bullet pointy. That's kind of what it's like in the book, though. The one thing I will give this book is that it wasn't really boring. It was constantly moving at a pretty fast pace. So that was good, at least. It was over quicker. Not really what I was expecting for a villain origin story here. Going into this, I'm like, all right, we're following the villain. So I know by the end he's gonna be the villain. We see this guy at the start, he's sympathetic to the capital stuff, but he cares about his family. He's very poor. He just wants to do right by them. But he never really changes at all. Which was kind of weird. There's no moment in the book that's a tipping point for him to become evil. He's just sort of always like this and is a bit of a casual asshole. A case in point, his relationship with Lucy, it's extremely toxic. He is very possessive over her. He always talks about her like she's an object. Like, my Lucy, my girl, she belongs to me. Jesus Christ, man, chill. I'm thinking to myself the whole time, I'm like, alright, Lucy probably is self-aware. Like, she seemed, from everything we've seen of her, she seems like she's probably intelligent. Like, I was really under the impression she was going to betray him, or, like, call him out, to admit that she was using him. But none of that happens. Like, these two characters are so stagnant throughout the whole thing. Sure, Coriolanus has, like, his inner conflict, but he was always loyal to the capital. It's not a surprise what happens at the end of the book. And it just feels like this whole thing, coming from his perspective, was extremely pointless. Imagine if he was a bit of a nicer character throughout the whole book, someone you could actually sympathize with and root for, and then maybe he's inadvertently responsible for Lucy's death at the end, and that's what sets him over the edge. And I think her death would have been a really important turning point for Coriolanus, where we could definitively see him go from this, like, naive kid to being the hardened, ruthless man we saw in the original trilogy. But it doesn't really feel like that. So I'm kind of just left scratching my head as to what this book really accomplished. Because aside from, like, the usual, like, prequel Easter eggs, it really feels like this was sort of just made for shits and giggles. Like, this was a story that could have existed. Like, a President Snow villain origin sounds alright on paper, and seeing the beginnings of the Hunger Games we know today could have also been pretty interesting. But it's just like stuff the series has done before, but far less interesting, with very stagnant characters whose relationships don't really make any sense. And it kind of just made me want to reread the original Hunger Games instead. So yeah, if you're a massive Hunger Games fan, you've probably already read this. If not, I would definitely not recommend it. And I am very much now not looking forward to the new movie. I'm sure I'll probably watch it with my book club at some point. But I've seen the trailers. It looks very faithful to the book, so I don't really see it being much better. Could surprise me. I don't know. Nah, it would have been so satisfying to see a Dune sweet man, Mike. Okay, I think I've rambled enough about this nonsense. Have you guys read this? Let me know your thoughts. Thank you all for watching. I will reiterate what I always do when I talk about YA books. I'm obviously not the target demographic here. There are probably plenty of Hunger Games fans who really enjoyed this one, and great, all the power to them. But I can still recognize when I think a book is not very well written, and that's where we're at here. We'll do a fall update video next, I think. Almost time for that. Yeah, sure.